Sorry if you don't mind, I'm going to be cheating on this a little bit. Alright, everyone ready? I just want to start off today by thanking everyone for coming. Thank you very much for coming and supporting the program. Basically just here, just to let everyone know, just dream big. Everything's possible, you just have to work hard and everything will come true. So, basically, we're a startup grind in Los Angeles. We started up in Palo Alto next to Stanford. And we're at AOL in Palo Alto. We're getting great speakers, which are really inspiring everyone. The crowd is really growing from, I think they started out with 4 people in the Common Red office. And then we had 50 people. And then it dropped down to 10 again, and we didn't know if we should just go home. But then just kept going, and now we're 350, 400, 450. So the startup community up there obviously is Palo Alto, so it's going to be huge. Me being from Southern California, I was like, we need to do this down in Southern California, Los Angeles. We need to get the startup companies going down here. Everyone just try to build the best products you can and make it at least the second Silicon Valley of the world. Well, I'm actually here. Hello. I'm happy today to have our guest Brian Norgard, which I'm sure everyone knows, a serial entrepreneur, founder of Nuru, Adley, Chill.com. Welcome, Brian, and thank you for taking your time with us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
I'm really excited, really impressed with everything you've done and the programs you've built. I want to share with everyone the different programs you've built and kind of how, where you came from and just different things on, just to show how normal people can make dreams come true. And we will start off with, where did you grow up growing up? Where are you from, Brian? Let's hear it. So we're just going to get a scoop. I'm doing it kind of like the whole film thing. We're going to build it up so we love this guy. And then...
It's going to take a lot.
We either love him or hate him.
Right.
And then we'll go from there.
So I'm from Del Mar, California, about 2 hours down the road. And my mother's from Hollywood. So I spent vast majority of my time in Southern California. As you can tell, I don't take myself too seriously. This is how I dress every day. And I figured I'd give it to you raw. And frankly, I've lived across the country. I've lived in Boston, Providence, Rhode Island, where I went to school. Spent a lot of time in Boston, a lot of time in New York, and then subsequently San Francisco.
How do you what do you think about the East Coast and the West Coast? Is West Coast #1?
That's a terrible question. Yeah.
Everyone knows the answer, right?
Yeah, we don't know the answer.
So growing up, I just want to throw it out there, watermen over here.
Absolutely.
Watermen surfers for all the ladies.
All the ladies?
How come the ladies aren't screaming?
Come on, let's hear it.
It's alright, just one.
I have to work on that. Make sure you bring 10 girls to every meeting you come. So what made you choose, growing up in Del Mar, Southern California, living the dream from what you see on TV, what made you decide to move cross country and go to Brown University?
Brown's a really wacky place. I see a lot of alumni in the crowd. Really encourages free thinking and frankly a sort of a nuanced view on the world. And I just felt comfortable there, and I liked the people there, and I liked that people were willing to challenge the status quo. And everyone who knows someone from Brown can tell you that people from Brown really do look at the world through a different lens. So that was very attractive to me. And
I agree. Brown just has such a great reputation. Probably one of the top 5 schools in the world.
Yeah, it's a great place.
Good job. Good job to get in there.
Thank you.
Let's see, and then let's talk about what made you become an entrepreneur and what kind of jobs you had before and during the decision to become an entrepreneur.
So, this is an interesting question, which is really the idea of, is it nature or nurture that creates entrepreneurs? And I've always been interested in, I'm a systems thinker. I like to think about systems, I like to think about how things work, why they work certain ways, what are the entry points, the levers, what's the technology. I like to think about things in a very holistic manner. And I always thought that entrepreneurship was sort of the epitome of that ethic, and that's what I was drawn to. I wasn't always an entrepreneur. I wasn't the kid selling candy when I was 11. But very quickly after a bunch of recurring shitty internships, I realized that I wanted to do something different. And you know, I did a lot of Excel jockeying, photocopying, you know, trips to coffee machines for people who were senior managers. And I said to myself, there's got to be a better way. And so it was sort of it was a process that led me into entrepreneurship, but it wasn't something that, you know, I didn't wake up when I was 10 years old and say I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I just like to think about hard problems.
Cool, that's perfect. So, so did you learn from all that coffee grabbing and everything? Did that help you in by any way now? Are you better grabbing coffee right now?
You know, one thing that has trained me, you know, the terrible internships. So this is a diatribe that I'm going to jump right in, and I think that one of the coolest things about doing shitty jobs is you really learn what you don't want. And I think a lot of people, unfortunately, go into these sort of jobs where they're really, you know, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. They look in, they say, oh God, this is going to be so great. They sit there for 3 or 4 years, and then they go, holy shit, this is not something I want to do. And I knew right off the bat that, you know, pushing paper and, you know, doing sort of jobs that had no impact, no meaning, they were just simply something, you know, some sort of checklist item, that was not for me. So, you know, frankly, when I was 19 years old, I made up my mind that I was going to do something on my own.
You're ready to be a rock star, huh?
Well, that's what they call them today, but yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's what I hear.
Yeah.
A show of hands, how many people have gone through that same, like, internship where you're just like, dude, I cannot do this for the rest of my life? For all of you who haven't, you're very lucky. So then I'm going to jump right into, how did you end up as an intern at Merrill Lynch, just to start off?
You know, just the standard iBanking route where you know, someone tells you there's a great job, it's called an investment banker, and you can check it out, and you know, it's a road to riches and all this crap that is really a bunch of lies. In fact, it is for certain people, but it just wasn't for me. So I did some stuff for Congress, I did some stuff at Merrill Lynch, and then really quickly I said, holy crap, I've got to get my life in order, I've got to do something where it's sort of like, it all rests on my shoulders, and whether I succeed or fail. So
yeah,
very quickly, I'm one of the lucky ones. I didn't realize this at, you know, 35 or 40. I realized this at 19. And I feel like if there's anything that I feel extremely blessed in my life, besides my friends and family and the people I work with, it's that very, very soon into my career, I decided that I wanted to do something different. And, you know, entrepreneurship is very, very trendy today. And it's something that is attached as, you know, it's almost culturally cool to say you're an entrepreneur. And when I first used to tell people I wanted to be an entrepreneur, people used to laugh at me. And they would say, isn't that the same as being broke? And, you know, the truth is, for most people it is. But, you know, I was very fortunate to, you know, have that sort of come to Jesus moment very early in my life.
That's great. Yeah, I know how that feels like. I've been asked a few times, oh, where I'm an entrepreneur, and it's like, that means you don't have a job, right? I'm just like, something like that. But I understand where you're coming from with that one. I had a few just great questions. I was like, oh, I want to, since I'll probably never be able to talk to you if it was just a random day, but now that I have you here, I'm like, I'm going to ask some questions that could really help me out as well as the crowd. And,
don't be selfish.
As well as the crowd, you guys can have some too. But, what sparked the first ideas for your project, and who were they with after a long night of partying, a few drinks?
Those guys all work for the current company.
Well, I'm glad to have the beers. Makes me feel good.
Yeah.
We are too.
So, you know, ideas, they come from a lot of different places, and one of the things that I've always focused on, and I've never sort of lost this, is a sense of wonderment. Always looking at the world and saying to myself, like, how could this be improved? What would be a better experience? What would I do differently? And so, unfortunately, if you spend a day with me, you'll realize that no matter what it is, whether it's you know, picking up food or talking about it in someone else's product, our own product, I'm always looking at things critically and asking, how could this be something different? And I think that's just sort of a way of thinking. And you know, most of my ideas have come from essentially the same place, which is I take long walks. I really try to like clear my head. You know, I'm one of these guys where I think you should read everything. You should read things you like, things you don't like, things that are sent to you, things that potentially you're not as familiar with. And so I'm always reading, taking those inputs in, and then figuring out a way to synthesize them. And generally, the great ideas come from a walk, talk, a conversation. It all comes together. And so, I can't really, I think there's also this eureka myth in entrepreneurship where everyone sits down and they say, God, it all came together at that one moment. Well, perhaps it did come together, but you were also thinking about it and synthesizing for months on end. And so most of the stuff we come up with is massively iterative, where it's all, our best ideas are basically adaptations on, the 400th idea that we had.
Yeah. Okay.
And so, one of our core principles and my core principles in entrepreneurship is there really is no such thing as an idea. It's entirely dynamic, it's always moving, and your job is to just be tweaking, just a little bit, degree here, a degree there, along the way until finally you hit something that you know is going to work, and then you scale that idea.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the ethic that I take to everything, which is it's not just a product, it's design, it's technology. It's always asking yourself, how can this be improved? What am I doing differently than these guys? What's wrong with the product? What would the customer respond to in a different way? And just literally asking the hard questions every single day. And it's very taxing. I mean, the one thing about, I think we're all sold this idea that Airbnb happened overnight, Facebook happened overnight. Do you know how many product releases have occurred between 2003 and 2011 at Facebook? I mean, it's probably a number that you wouldn't even be able to fundamentally grasp. It so big. I mean, I imagine the amount of check-ins on the Facebook store, it's beyond crazy. And the reason why is because Facebook is an idea. It's an idea of constantly updating, a product to fit a customer's need. And so, I would say that, we've taken that ethic to every company that I've built with my co-founder Dan Gold, which is essentially it's just never good enough, and we're always going to be tweaking.
That's fantastic. I think that's as well, just to add a little bit, it's just so that more than an idea, it's basically just a series of steps and research. A lot of people think, oh, I had an idea and I'm going to go make it happen, but it's not only just having an idea, it's doing all the, would you agree with doing all the research, checking out oh, can you make money in this industry? Can you make money in that industry? Can you make money with this product? Can you do this with this product?
Yeah, I mean, you have to do your homework, of course. Mark Cuban is famous for is a famous blog post about doing your homework, and I think there's nothing worse than sitting down with an entrepreneur who has a great idea, who then you ask them about a respective competitor or someone in the market, they don't know who they are. It shows a very narrow version of the world, and frankly, we try to figure out everything that's going on around us, and then we just move. And it's worked in the past, and it's my style. It's not everyone's style. But I think especially in the consumer internet today, I don't know how many of you guys are trying to build, consumer internet products or web-based products, but you have to remember that there is no such thing as a great idea. There's great execution and there's great teams, but there's not great ideas. Foursquare, I don't think started out as a great idea, but it's a great company today. And there's any number of companies out there which I could point to and say to you, I saw the first prototype of YouTube, guys. It was not a good idea. It was actually, I can remember chuckling in the room and people said, wow, those guys are going to have a rough time. I can quote Nivi Babak, who all of you guys probably know. He runs Angel.co or AngelList. And he literally told me after Chad walked out of the room, I don't think that's going to do very well. It's the #3 largest website in the world.
You gotta love that. So that whenever someone says it can't be done, it just, I don't know, for me it gives me more fire. Oh, yeah. It's not going to work. I'm just yes, perfect. I want to hear, because as soon as they say it's going to work, you're oh no. It's almost like a shadowing. So then I'm going to get into, we'll go,
we're going to edit this out.
we got the whole edit team.
Here's the thing, if anyone has questions, we have a small group. We should make this as Socratic as possible, and frankly, why not be able to ask questions in real time? Happy to give you my honest feedback, and I think that the difference between me and most people is I am an absolute optimist by nature. That is my DNA, but I also tell you that entrepreneurship is really hard, and there's a lot of scary moments, and I'm frankly happy. I'm happy to tell you about what I think is hard or where I think the prickly points are, because it's not all pretty. I think one of the things today that's crazy about what's going on is we have this amazing sort of like this cultural movement around creating things and going back to our roots and really thinking about how do we sort of rethink this idea of America and capitalism. And I think it's fucking the most amazing thing time ever. Mobile is happening, tablets are happening, globalization is happening. Literally 2 billion people are coming onto the internet right now, and everyone in this room, I would imagine, has a proclivity to building something in the sort of internet domain. There is a renaissance happening, but you also have to realize that with that comes all of the things that happen in bubbles: mania, overreactions, Me Too products. And there's just a lot of things that I've done. I've made every mistake in 10 years of doing sort of starting companies, working with companies, advising companies. I've made essentially every mistake you can make. And so I think if you guys have questions, I'm happy to answer you, and I'll try to be as honest as possible.
Do we have a question right now?
Sure.
Let's hear it.
Tell us about your mistakes. What were the worst ones? What did you learn from those?
So I think the biggest mistakes that I've made. So I've taken some calculated gambles, and sometimes I would, there's a famous quote that, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. I've looked at past models and imparted my theories on the fact that a past model worked a certain way, therefore my model or the future model would work the same way. And I think that I'm much less ideological and dogmatic about, sort of taking a model and then fusing it on the next generation. I tend to think things through a lot more because, frankly, it's really easy to say, well, PhotoBucket built the largest photo sharing network in the world on top of a platform they didn't own. Well, I can do the same thing with advertising on top of Twitter. And in fact, I should have really sat back and thought for a second and said, you know what? Maybe building a monetization network, like the principal area of revenue generation on top of the largest social network, is not the most brilliant idea in the world. But this is like, obviously this is revisionist history, but I think that's the first thing I've done. The second thing is, I used to put a lot of credence in ideas. That ideas were everything. It was all about the magical idea, the elixir, the perfect monetization model, perfect algorithm, the perfect interface, and I sort of think that's a bunch of shit. I think it's all about team building today. If you look at the best consumer internet teams in the world, you'll notice that these guys, the same group of people continues to build awesome products over and over and over. And it's because it's 4 or 5 great individuals who really have, synchronicity of thought and pattern and all that process, excuse me. And that's really that's the difference maker in the world. Like, there's a reason why Steve Jobs, created 4 or 5 incredible product kits in the last 6 years. It's because it was a collection of people who really had a way of thinking. And I think that when I was young in my career, it was all about ideas. Now it's all about people. And I think that it's very romantic to wake up one night and say, this is going to be the coolest app ever. But that's really not the way the world works.
Well, you have to just wait and see what the people say, right?
Wait and see, yeah, and wait, see what they say. Get it out there quickly, test it, and keep moving. Try other things. There's a really sort of dynamic process between when you have an idea and when you actually ship something. And Eric Ries said something the other day. He said, I thought it was awesome. He said, if you don't have a discrete hypothesis, you shouldn't be in the startup business. And I think that is like a very brilliant way of saying, if you don't know what you're freaking measuring, or you don't know the assumption you're drawing about your customer, then why are you launching the product? And if you have too many assumptions you're testing, then why are you launching the product? Boil down assumptions to very simple things that you can understand. Do customers like filters? Yes, they like filters. Do customers like to take photos? Yes, they like to take photos. Well, we have Instagram. It's like you look at some of the best products out there today, and it's that the founders really understood this idea of like, let's test very simple things that we know people are going to sort of react to or not react to. And I've made all of these product mistakes myself. I've tried to test too much at once, so I couldn't really tell what was working, what was not working, or I've gotten too caught up in my own BS, which is, I think, one of the things we do and sort of a diatribe on product development, we all use the same tools. Every one of us is probably using Facebook, Twitter, Google, YouTube. I mean, the list is very short. So we all have these same biases around product development. So what happens is when we build shit, it all looks the same. No one wants the same thing. And so that's the other part about this generation of innovation that's really, really, really hard. You need to get out of your own head. And getting out of your own head is, I mean, it only happens once in a while, but when it does and you know that you're actually looking through a customer's eyes, you should relish those moments. And some people are just amazing at it. They can spend 20 minutes on an app, pull back and say, this is what works, this is what doesn't work, but that takes years of pattern matching, and it takes years of really knowing what a product should do. Because one of the things we talk about a lot is that people are motivated generally by the same stuff. It's vanity, it's sex, it's showing, it's look, keeping up with the Joneses. There's all of these things, unfortunately. I mean, we're all human. And so I think that one of the things that I never really understood until a couple of years ago is that building products around the things that we all share is really the key, the essence to doing great things on the internet. And some people are just amazing at it. Evan from Twitter, I mean, it's like there's a reason why he's 3 for 3, right? More or less. I mean, he did Blogger, he did Odeo, and then he did Twitter. I mean, he just knows how to build simple stuff that people care about. He gets rid of the crap, he cuts out the crud, because he understands people don't want all that stuff. And so I think that to me, if I could rewind, in fact, and I would never want to do this, but if I could rewind my career, I would rewire myself to think about what motivates people and why they do certain things. And I would have, and I would have loved to have known this stuff when I was 21.
Well, that's great. Well, that's great for all of us who know that now. Made it easier for everybody.
Yeah.
Write that one down, you guys.
That's it, you got it.
Write that one down.
Just go.
How technical is your background? Like, did you come from computer science or engineering, or were you just good at working with those people or finding?
Yes, so it's an interesting question. I throughout, basically I was the kid that had the modem when you shouldn't have had a modem, and was playing on all sorts of different devices, but I was never really interested in hardcore programming. I was much more interested in the system that made the machine. I was the guy that would literally take apart the computer and try to figure out what did what. And so when I got into college, I learned really quickly. I had an amazing professor, and he said to me, what you need to do is do what you do well. And he said, do you want to be a programmer? And there was a long pause, and I said, I don't want to sit behind a terminal all day. I actually want to understand customers. And so, but one of the things that I figured out really early in my career, which I'm absolutely blessed for, this is this was my eureka moment. I realized that I wasn't going to be the guy who never cared about anything that ever happened in the organization, was the guy who just oh, that's the interface, we're going to use that. I wanted to understand each discrete part and then be able to work with these people every day. And I actually spent my entire, I would say, my entire Brown career hanging out in the lab. I hung out with the CS guys and the engineering guys. I wasn't hanging out in the social department, even though I took tons of social classes. So it helped me sort of speak the language, and now engineering to me is, the thing that I love about engineering is, I think there's sort of two types of minds when it comes to hardcore technology. It's how to actually instrument technology and what technology is capable of. And I think I'm much more sort of the latter, which is I understand what you can do with technology and what the boundaries are, but I'm not necessarily a guy who's going to sit down and program every day. And I know my strengths and weaknesses, and frankly, I sit down with a lot of people who ask hard questions like, I'm not a programmer, what should I do? And I always say to people the same thing. It's if you're not a programmer, don't go buy a book and learn how to write Ruby. That's not going to help you. Figure out what you do well and extend that.
And then I want to go just what do you think to me the most important thing in the whole world right now is teams. Teamwork. Teamwork is so key. You can't every great business wasn't built with one person. Even Apple, everything was built with a team. what do you find really important about teams, and what like do you still have the same team you've had for a while? Do you still work with the same guys? Is it like a chemistry you guys get together? It's almost like a relationship. It's almost like the guy you're working with next to you is like your girlfriend almost at some point.
These guys smiling. I'm gonna pan the camera real quick. So teams, I can't, teams are everything, and I've been on good teams and I've been on bad teams, and the thing that I've learned is that complimenting yourself with people that you trust is the most important thing. Yeah, there's nothing more important, because there's no way you're going to compete in the consumer internet without a team. I can remember one instance, maybe chat roulette, where the guy actually basically scripted the entire thing, launched it, and then it just completely just imploded for a variety of reasons. But most things out there are built by great teams, and I think it's the hard part when you think about teams is what makes a great team up. And I think first you need some leadership, but second, what really works for us today, and I'm going to point to sort of Chill, my current company. So the reason why we're able to ship more products than probably most people can dream up on a a startup weekend, and we literally have shipped. And I'm proud of this, I'm also not proud of it, but let's just say we've shipped 4 or 5 huge product releases, even in the last 6 weeks.
Just for you guys who don't know, Adley Chill, this huge website, it's just amazing. This great work. So
yeah.
I'm sure you guys
So I'm going to kind of get into the details of how we do it. So we have literally world-class people in each vertical that have ownership. They're literally their own CEOs. Scott is literally a world-class designer. Jeff Potter sitting right there is world-class back-end engineer. Asher, he's going to be world-class. He's not there quite yet. He's young. I said going. We have Mike here. The way that we work is really simple. Everyone has ownership of some piece of the stack, and we respect that ownership. And it's really, really hard to find people that are good enough where you actually respect the decision they're making, and because each of these are sort of make or break deals. But I look at all the best consumer internet teams today, and I see the same type of pattern, which is generally 4 to 12 people, and there's 3 or 4 designers, or 2 or 3 designers, 3 or 4 front end engineers, 3 or 4 back end engineers with someone who really runs the technical side, someone who really runs the product side, and that's how our company rolls. So it's really nice to have a great team. I don't know how you actually play in the consumer internet without the team these days. When I meet the lone programmer, the lone wolf who says I'm building this, I always say you know what, man, this entrepreneurship game is miserable. You got to go find someone to do it with you, and not only for technical support but emotional support, because startups are absolutely gut-wrenching. You will lose friends. You will have family members alienate you, and you will frankly, you can look like the hero, but you also will look like the crazy nut. And I've been all of those guys. I think I'm back to crazy nut, by the way.
I'm with you on that one. The crazy nut.
Yeah. Sorry.
I had an opportunity to speak with Scott Painter recently. It was probably one of the most extreme examples of entrepreneurial parallel processing I've ever met in my entire life. Something like 38 incorporation events in his career. How do you know when to focus on how many concurrent ideas you process at the same time? How do you know when to focus, and how do you know when to shut something down?
Yeah, so I think that's a very complicated question. Yeah. Concurrent companies never worked well for me. This sort of partial attention CEO-ship, partial attention product development. I think this consumer internet world has gotten way, way too competitive to be the guy or the gal who's running 2 or 3 companies. And I've met plenty of people who say, yeah, I've got 3 companies, and I'm always like, okay, how are they doing? And there's usually a long pause. Well, this one's in that state. So I don't really believe in sort of parallel company building, but we do a lot of parallel product development in our own company. And it's that which I can comment on is it's very difficult, but one of the things that you have to know how to do is you have to know how to kill products. You have to know how to kill features. And one of the sort of key mistakes and failings of young entrepreneurs is they will literally build something and they cannot let go of it. And I've probably killed 10 times the amount of source code that's ever seen the light of day or that should persist versus what's living today. And you know what? It's cathartic to me to kill things because what it's a form of adaptation. And so I think that if you're talking about multiple ideas within one company, that can be a very healthy thing if you know when to cut your losses. But multiple companies is, I mean, it's beyond me. These guys who operate, Jack Dorsey who operates Square and Twitter, like I honestly have no concept how he does it. But I'd love to learn.
Maybe we'll get him here the next one. You can write down some notes.
Who's calling them?
Freedom. I just had a quick question. We'll have a few more questions from the audience. I just had a few questions I wanted to get out. How's starting a startup in LA different from starting one in Palo Alto? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Wow, that's a very loaded question because I said I was going to be honest. If it was my first company, I probably wouldn't start it in Los Angeles. And so there was an incredible support network in San Francisco, Palo Alto, Mountain View that I was able to reap huge amounts of returns from. And it's not just money, it's advice, it's mentorship, it's the guys who would come over and look at my product and say, that's dog shit, Brian. It's absolute dog shit. You can do better. That community is emerging in Los Angeles, and I think it's a beautiful thing. But I don't believe that it's fully there yet. And I'm doing my best to try to help people get to that next level. My second the current class of companies that I'm doing and Chill in particular, like. We obviously keep a very open mind, but we're also very, very focused and tactical on our product development, our technical development, and we leverage a lot of the ecosystem that I had already sort of been a part of in San Francisco, so it's sort of like we never left. We go up there, I have a lot of friends there, a lot of investments there, I spend a lot of time there.
You used to do a lot of trips up there as well?
Yeah, a lot of trips up there. It's a 40-minute drive, flight on Southwest in Burbank. It's not a big deal. But if it was my first company, I would still have serious reservations about starting in Los Angeles. And we're all hoping to change that. I mean, I think everyone in this room who's sitting here is probably from Los Angeles. And we're all saying, like, how can we build an ecosystem and community where the support system is the same? It's just more mature there. And, like, no matter what way you look at it, there's more serious entrepreneurs. There's more venture capitalists. There's more people who've been there, had real leadership positions and amazing technical and product teams. So, you're going to get more companies. But I think that's changing.
Yeah, that's awesome. I agree with you with the Palo Alto thing. I was up there this summer. It was phenomenal. Just the amount of work and everyone that helps out. And I would love to as well. Like, if we could do the same in Los Angeles and everyone help each other out. And
here's the thing. It's going to take an anchored company. And one of the things that people sort of misunderestimate about Palo Alto or San Francisco is they just think magically there's a whole bunch of tech people and everyone's really interested in technology. It's not that way. The way it literally has years of innovation, years of investment that have created this ecosystem. I mean, it goes back to HP, Bill Hewlett. I mean, I'm a sort of historian of all of the stuff that's happened in technology in the last 100 years. And I mean, you go back to the first VCs in the 50s, speculating on some of the craziest stuff. Bessemer Ventures, Bessemer Trust is hundreds of years old. Literally, it's been around since the 1800s. And then, sort of more of a current crop of companies, there's been anchor companies for years. I mean, Yahoo has spawned hundreds of startups. Google has spawned hundreds of startups. The one thing that LA has yet to really sort of wrap its arms around is an anchor company, something that puts out literally hundreds of, product and technical, product engineers and technical engineers. And it's gonna, we were close with MySpace, but, lost that one. So, and yeah, I worked there for a bit. They acquired my first company, so I a few observations about that. But unfortunately, someone's going to do it in Los Angeles in this genre of companies, and when they do it, I hope hope it spawns, another 50 great companies.
That'd be fantastic. And a few more. All right, go ahead. Let's ask another
Well, I
question.
was going to mention that you kind of talked about the importance of teams relative to ideas.
Sure.
But where does inspiration come from for you?
Well, I mean, this is that classic question, that most VCs or most investors will ask you, is like, why are you passionate about this market, Brian? Why are you passionate about this market, Karen? And I think that, like, my passion has always come from just intellectual interest. I mean, I'm interested in everything from the record business to, real estate, commercial real estate. I like B2B software. I'm a type of guy who wakes up and wonders about supply chains. I mean, it's just intellectual curiosity. But, to answer your question, like, my inspiration comes from working with great people and trying to solve hard problems. Like, I love seeing talented people succeed. And I love seeing customers look at a product and their eyes open up and they say, wow, that is amazing. I didn't know you could do that. And so I just get off on that stuff. And it's like really weird. And there's just certain people find pleasure in different things. And I've just always loved that sort of wonderment of like, what if we did this? Is this possible? And then there's just like a brilliant engineer in the corner who says, I think I know how to do that. And then someone else says, you know what, I got an interface for that. And then immediately 2 weeks later, you're sitting in front of a customer and you show it to them and they go, holy crap. And that, that to me is like, there's a lot of people that go out, talk about impact and meaning and what is the lifetime value of, what is your ROI to society. And I don't tend to think that big. I sort of tend to think about the moment. And entrepreneurship to me is just really, it's an amazing thing, in the good times and the bad. And when it is bad, and I have probably half the nights I go to bed worrying about things, I wake up in the morning thinking about opportunity. And like, I had a corporate job once, and I know the feeling of driving in and wondering when your first break is going to be and what lunch is going to look like. I didn't want to live a life like that. I wanted to build things.
Let's get it. Now, where are we going?
Sure.
We'll go right here.
Okay.
You're
in charge.
Alright,
Yeah.
we'll go here first and then we'll move right there second
Yeah.
and then third.
Alright, so like what is like how do you go about excuse me, like
Yeah.
finding a team that you feel that group that you feel like real comfortable with and that kind of clicks with you as far as getting your vision down and getting it to come to life. Like,
Yeah, that doesn't come overnight, right?
It never comes overnight, but I think you've got to know where to look, and you have to actually be truly interested in what you're doing. And I think I've seen a lot of people who, for economic interests, I'm going to go find myself a great designer. I'm going to go find myself a product engineer that can do amazing things. I like to just find people that share the same intellectual interests with me and figure out where we could go from there. And so, I mean, if you're younger, you've got to, I think there's amazing opportunities in all these hackathons and all these startup events. Like, whether we're building real companies or not is not the issue. I think these are great places to find people that are interested in the same thing you are. In my day, which was about 10 years ago, those were the old business plan competition days. And I mean, they're the worst and just like terrible, like just the worst stuff ever. But it was like 3 kids who wanted to put the business plan together, and that meant something. And so I think, it's not just intellectual interest, it's also values. And a lot of times you see teams where there's, people that are in very different points in their life, or, they're finding some random guy off the street, and like most of the stuff, I work with all my best friends. And, I think there's a lot of cliches about that, or a lot of people who will look down on that and say, you don't mix business with pleasure. Well, I don't know what world they live in. Like, what world do these people live in? So I've always surrounded myself with friends, people that had similar values and people that I trusted, and also people that shared the same intellectual interests.
Did they become your best friends, or were they your best friends from the back?
No, I don't. Well, sometimes it depends.
Like the ones you're talking about that you're working with, were they just like, oh, your best friends, just all we started putting stuff together, or people that you eventually met to join your team that you guys worked so hard together, now you're best friends?
It's a combination of both. But I would say mostly it started with like a deep-seated interest in something that we both were just super passionate about, that was weird and nuanced and counterculture, and everyone thought we were. I mean, like I can remember the day in 2003. I mentioned to a friend of mine that I was going to do some internet stuff with another friend that I met, my current co-founder Dan Gold, and he said, "Did you not get the fucking memo. And I said, what memo was that? And he said, the internet bubble has burst. Okay. So, you know, we just went on our walk and kept doing what we were doing and didn't really care about what the conventional wisdom was at the time, and, you know, had a lot of fun along the way.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Oh, right there, there we go.
Yeah, I was wondering about your thoughts around startup accelerators. There's a lot of them popping up around town recently, not so much in LA, but
Yeah.
in San Francisco and New York specifically. So I was wondering if you actually participated in one and what you thought about them. And the second question was around capital. So wondering how you navigated seed capital all the way through Series A funding, if you got that, and what the challenges are.
Yeah, super great question. On first one is something that I've thought a lot about. So accelerators. I think accelerators certainly have a place in the ecosystem. But I have a religious view that if you know you're getting money at the end of the line, it just seems to me like, the one thing that I like about entrepreneurs is I love the entrepreneurs that have been scathed with hot water, the people that have felt pain. And I have a lot of friends. I mean, the difference between a good entrepreneur and a great entrepreneur is, I mean, you know it when you see it. People have been hurt and they've seen what it feels like to literally have no money left in your bank account, to literally have no one take your call. To have that moment where someone calls and says, actually, you're not getting the money. Like that, those are amazing things for entrepreneurs to grow on, to learn from, and to essentially become better, better instrumenters of whatever their vision is. And so I'm not anti-accelerator, but I feel like if the path is to get into an accelerator just to get money, and that money is at a defined endpoint and it all is hunky-dory, then it just seems to me it's too easy. Y Combinator here has like a 3% acceptance rate, and so I mean that alone is some amazing gating mechanism, and they're getting sort of fishing from a stock pond. They're getting the best of the best, and so there's always going to be the Y Combinators and the Techstars of the world that are going to get great companies, people that will probably be in the market, irrespective of an accelerator or not, and so I think those guys will still do well. But I sometimes worry about the second and third tier accelerators. And so, history, I mean, we will see. We will see in a couple of years what happens. But I think when you start treating companies like sausage factories, there are issues. And it just doesn't work that way. So to your second question, startup capital, it's a really simple thing that we did, and it's something that we still do, which is you need to sort of open your network. You need to work like a dog. You need to find the right people who you know are investing, and you need to show them something amazing. They get a pitch every day. They get a business plan every day. How do you stand out? I literally took my entire tower to Ron Conway's house. I walked all the way up Washington Street in San Francisco in 2004 and a half, 2005, and said, we have something to show you with my co-founder. And he's like, why did you bring your computer? Well, we didn't have a laptop. We had a tower. We had 2 desktops. And so, I think that the thing about startup capital and raising money and doing it in a competitive environment is you need to stand out. And so I have the same issue where I see a lot of awesome guys come through, a lot of awesome girls come through, or say, hey, I need help. I want you, to invest. I want you to advise. Like, if I don't respond back, it's not because I'm being mean. I just want to see, like, okay, does he email a second time or a third time? Or does someone show up? I literally had an entrepreneur the other day take a bus to come see me. And he was like sweating and, like nervous and everything. But he took a bus. I mean, that meant something. It was worth something.
What was the outcome of that bus ride? That's what
it was a great conversation. I helped him clarify a lot of his assumptions. And so, I'm still doing the same too. I mean, I have amazing investors, Atlas Ventures, Kleiner Perkins, Redpoint, Troy Carter, who's Gaga's manager. I mean, the list goes on and on. I've had to hustle for some of that stuff too. And it's not easy.
What is one key, just for investors, instead of finding investors, what do you think? Do you have any good tips for anybody?
Well, I mean, it starts with something simple, which is you got to build something interesting. Investing, we live in a performance-based society. And no one's going to invest because you're a nice guy, because they think you're friends with someone, they're friends with someone in your family. People are out to make money, and these are capitalists, and so you have to show something interesting. You don't have to show everything. Don't think you need to build this incredible house, but you need to build an incredible door, or an incredible window, or something that tells a story that you're different. And like, oftentimes when people say to me, I've got a great idea, well, I want to see something, some tangible proof that you have a great idea. A customer that's interested, a UI that's beautiful, perhaps a piece of code that does something awesome that says to me, shit, these guys are, they have a chance. And I think if you're going about it in a very literal way, which is like, I have a business plan, I'm going to email someone once, I'm going to ask them kindly to take a look, you're probably not going to get that far.
We'll go.
Yeah.
Question right there.
So, when you meet with the VC, and often in the pitch, you have to present how marketable is your product? How did you go about scaling that? How did you be able to prove that you have a viable product and 1 million people would have bought it without actually having 1,000 customers even under your belt?
So different things stand out, at least from my, from my experiences. And a few times, I can remember one of the first sort of fundraisers I did. Anyone that knows my co-founder, he's a brilliant guy, absolute genius. And we were sitting down with Rajiv Motwani, the late, great, amazing Rajiv Motwani, and he said, I've been thinking about, he asked us a question, what are you doing? And we said, we're working on, X project. And he said, have you thought about this algorithm? Literally, my partner knew more about that algorithm than he did. And he wrote the textbook on it. And so there's many different examples of that, where we've really impressed investors, not just with our product, but with our ability to know the right questions to ask, know the right algorithms, know how to think about products in a certain way, understand how certain systems work. So it's not purely product driven. Sometimes VCs are just looking for someone who has a really interesting, and they're tactical, and they're strategic, and they're all of those things. So it's not always product. But when it is product, you have to understand your market. You have to be credible. I think there's too many people that walk into VCs and they say, I've got something awesome, you're going to love it, if I get 1% of the market, here's what we're going to do. That's the worst pitch ever. That is the absolute worst pitch ever. You need to walk into a VC and you have to say, I am looking at the world differently. And they're going to say, wait, what do you mean? I have something that you don't know, and I'm going to tell you, I'm going to teach you about it. I'm going to show you how my product is going to impact this one little wrinkle that you're not seeing. And it's storytelling, it's narrative, it's all of those things. But I think if you go in with that straight sort of linear approach to, here is my product, here is my market, here is my team, and here is my risk points, they're going to whisk you right out the door. And it also starts by doing your homework and your relationship sort of acquisition, if you will, early. I've found that the most successful people in raising capital are at the events. They know the VCs, the angels, before they have to go in cold. Like, I don't even know if I've ever brought a deck ever to a VC's office, ever. I might have had one I might have had Keynote fired up in the background just in case, but I don't think I've ever started with the deck, because if I'm going to go talk to someone, I'm going to make sure that this isn't the first time we've met. And so that takes a lot of legwork too.
I heard that from a lot of people.
Yeah.
One last question.
Was there ever a time where you thought, I can do this without VC money, or I can do this without having to bring in some big dollars?
I don't normally approach, I think there are certainly projects where I've looked at things and I've said, nah, we could probably get away with funding this ourselves. But generally my dreams and my desires and my beliefs get away from me, and it spirals out of control, and then I figure out we have to raise $10, $20 million. So the answer is, there are obviously smaller projects where I feel like you could, if you have an awesome monetization, sort of that beautiful business model that fits in immediately, whether you're doing lead generation or you have some sort of direct response advertising that's yielding some amazing amount of money that allows you to sort of go forward without capital, but very rarely.
I have a question too. So because I know a lot of people think, oh, you need millions and millions of dollars to get this website going and this and that. What are your thoughts on using what's out there, like using some of the the WordPress and WordPress plugins to do?
It just depends on your goals. And if you're looking to do a lifestyle business, and you're looking to build something where you can comfortably support a team of 2 or 3, you might be able to get away building something on top of WordPress or using some sort of off-the-shelf CMS. I just think you have to know your goals. So it's dependent on what your goals are for that respective project.
Could it go a respectable goal would be just to have a product out there, something that you could just show and get people on and using, and then go from there using that?
Well, I think what's respectable is what you want it to be.
Okay.
And so, the classic definition of success is whatever you make it out to be. Some people's success is waking up in the morning, having a cup of coffee, and watching the Today Show. It's true, and who am I to judge? My version of success is, dynamic and fluid, and I'm always thinking about different things. And so, I think, if you want to do a smaller project and you want to be less ambitious about some of the tools, and you don't want to build it all from scratch, there's some amazing stuff out there. If you're building a content website, I don't know why you would re-engineer it, or why would you build a CMS from scratch. There's a ton of things you could do. It just depends on what your goals are.
We'll take one more question, but of all the sites you're doing, which one's your baby? Which one do you love the most? If your house is on fire and you take one site, which one do you do snack?
Okay, so here's a little plug. Here it comes. We're launching some really, really interesting stuff. Some of the best stuff that we've done, some of the best work that we've ever done in probably early January at Chill. And so one of the things that I've been seeing that I'm just absolutely head over heels about is if there is something that Los Angeles is going to take a leadership role in, it really is in a category of video and the future of television. And how we consume video is changing. It literally is, we've had essentially 60 years since television's been around, 110 years since feature films have been out. Literally, we're going to have more innovation in the next 3 years than all of that time combined. And so what we're really focusing on doing is taking everything we've learned from social networking, ad networks, scaling companies, to many millions of page views or users, and taking all of that energy and focusing it around how can we build a product that's so interesting and so fascinating for people that frankly it becomes one of those daily habits. And so Chill.com is we've been experimenting with a lot of different things, but I've never been so excited. And I think it's first and foremost because I've never had a team this good. I mean, our team is just incredible. And I've also never had a market opportunity where there's so much changing so fast. And I rarely sleep. I think about this 24/7, and I absolutely love every second of it. And this is I've never felt this energy, and I know that I'll look back on this time 10, 20 years and say that was it. But I'm just, if you can tell, I'm just head over heels. And this is how I felt. I saw Facebook. So this is a bit of a tangent, but in 2003, one of my best friends at Brown had transferred to Harvard, and he said to me, "You need to come up here because these guys are working on something, and I think it's really interesting, and you're the only guy that I know that even gives a rat's ass about the internet. So you should come check this out." So I took the bus up, went into the dorm, cut through a few alleys, and next thing I know, I'm in this room, and I'm getting a demo of Facebook. And this is basically pre-launch. Friendster at that time was out, and all of you that know your internet history realize that Friendster was a very, very important site at that moment. Was having tons of scaling issues. But it was right then and there that I understood, it just hit me like a ton of bricks, that this networked world was just it. It was everything, it was all in, this was the future. But I do remember telling the Facebook guys that this is a clone of Daily Jolt, and this is probably not a very good idea, because Friendster is too far along. But so I'm taking, that's the same perspective I have today in the future of the entertainment business, in the future of television. I'm seeing the same sort of attributes. Like everything's changing, the value chain is changing, YouTube is becoming this entirely like new, it's basically its own MSO. You know, the way that people produce content, the cost of producing content is changing. Hollywood itself, how people consume it, where they consume it, tablets, TVs, connected televisions, phones, everything is changing again. And so I'm so happy to be in a position to be working with guys like this to chase my dream. And that's to do something awesome. And you know, the truth is I don't know where it will lead, but in January, please email me at norgard@gmail or follow me on Facebook and send me a message. I'll get you in early to our next release, and it's going to be some interesting stuff, I promise.
Chill's amazing right now as it is. I was watching it with my nephew. He lives up north. We're able to watch something together and just have a good time. His dad's always out of town, so I was kind of filling in for a spot. So it's really great to just be able, because you could really like, you guys all been to movies and watching shows and you're laughing, just having a blast, and it's really fun to share it with someone. Not everyone might be as lucky as you to have people to share it with, so it's nice to share it with people who don't have that people. And even with friends, family, granny. I think gotta get some Latino shows on there so I can watch Granny.
You cover them all, don't you?
Much like Salvador Gigante up in that thing. It's a fantastic website.
Thank you.
We're pretty much done for the night here. Thank you, Brian, so much for being here.
Thanks, Dad.
I'm so proud of you. You just made me so proud. But you guys are doing a fantastic job. Everything you guys are building is just like blowing my head out of the water. I'm just like, whoa, what are these guys doing? I thought I was doing something right. I thought I was the big shot on the block, but dude, I just feel like the little ant right now. But you guys are doing fantastic. Keep it up. Keep pushing the bar up, and everyone is.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. And like I said, Twitter, twitter.com/Brian Norgard. Norgard@gmail is my personal email address, and I do my best to try to get back to people. I'm not always the most thorough, but when I do get back, I will promise you to pay attention for 5, 10, 15 minutes and give you my honest observation. And as I said, if anyone's interested in being on the new release list for Chill in January, please let me know.
Definitely. And thanks everyone for coming. Please check out Common Red, another launch on mystory.com, January 15th. We have Chill. There's just so many good products. Get out there and meet people. If you don't meet anyone tonight, you guys are blowing it. There's beer, there's tea, there's coffee, whatever makes you happy. So thanks again for coming, and we'll see you next time.